good stuff, but I guess it's all good stuff. Well, last week we finished chapter 16. Chapter 16 explains in detail exactly what happens when each one of the 7 vials of God's wrath is poured out upon the earth. The first vial, of course, causes horrible sores upon everyone who takes the mark of the beast. The second vial turns all of the ocean's water into blood, and it's like the blood of a dead man, so all of the living sea creatures die. The third vial causes all of the rivers and the springs to turn to blood. Now, this is kind of interesting because what this is telling us is that all of the fresh water on the earth is going to be contaminated. The fourth vial increases the intensity of the sun to the point that it causes third-degree burns. The fifth vial is poured out upon the throne of the beast, and his kingdom is plunged into darkness. The sixth vial dries up the Euphrates River in order to prepare a way for the kings of the east to be able to move their armies to Armageddon. So all of a sudden, we're seeing that this is all escalating towards this final climax, which is the return of Jesus Christ. The seventh vial causes 2 things to happen. First, an earthquake occurs. And this earthquake is unlike any earthquake ever before it. It literally changes the topography of the world. Mountains are flattened, islands disappear. All the cities around the world collapse, including the great city of Babylon. Secondly, hail the size of beach balls begins to fall upon the earth. Each one weighs about 100 pounds each. So what the earthquake doesn't destroy, the hailstones will. Now, as I said last week, most conservative scholars believe that Jesus Christ is going to return when the 7th vial is poured out. And when his feet touch the Mount of Olives, that's when this huge earthquake is going to occur. And all of those armies that are gathered at Armageddon are going to feel the impact of it. And those that escape the destruction of the earthquake are going to be pelted by those 100-pound hailstones. And that's chapter 16. So naturally, we would expect to read about the return of Jesus Christ when we get to chapter 17, beginning with verse number 1. But that doesn't happen. Instead, we have another interlude. We keep having these interludes. Now, how many of you remember what an interlude is? In literature, an interlude is what we would call parenthetical information. In other words, the chronological flow of events is interrupted in order to give the reader valuable information. The type of information that would leave you in the dark if you were not given it. So this is information that we all need to know. So I want you to take a look at our chart. Notice in this chart, in between the 7 vials of God's wrath and the return of Jesus Christ, we have this interlude that we're talking about. It includes 2 chapters, chapter 17 and chapter 18. Chapter 17 deals with the destruction of the whore of Babylon. Chapter 18 deals with the destruction of the city of Babylon. Now listen to me because this is very important. I wish scholars would get this. The whore of Babylon and the city of Babylon are 2 different things. Do not confuse the 2. The whore of Babylon is destroyed sometime around the middle of the tribulation, right around the time of the abomination of desolation. The reason she is destroyed is because the beast and the 10 kings hate her. Look at Revelation chapter 17, verse number 16. It says, the scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute. They will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire. Now, trust me, you're going to understand why the beast and the 10 kings hate her when you find out who she represents. On the other hand, the city of Babylon isn't destroyed until the end of the tribulation. It's destroyed by the earthquake and by fire. And when it's destroyed, these same kings will lament over her. Look at Revelation chapter 18, verses 8 through 11. Therefore, these plagues will overtake her in a single day. Death and mourning and famine. She will be completely consumed by fire. For the Lord God who judges her is mighty. And the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains. So these same kings who actually destroyed the whore of Babylon, the prostitute, because they hated her, when the city of Babylon is destroyed, what happens? Well, they stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will cry out, how terrible for you, O Babylon, you great city. In a single moment, God's judgment came on you. The merchants of the world will weep and mourn for her, for there is no one left to buy their goods. So as I said, the whore of Babylon and the city of Babylon are two different things. Don't confuse the two. Because if you have a commentary at home, one of the biggest mistakes that scholars make is they confuse the whore of Babylon with the city of Babylon, and that's why chapter 17 and 18 don't make much sense. Does that make sense? Good. So turn to chapter 17 and let's find out who the whore of Babylon is. Let's read verses 1 through 7. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore did you marvel? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which had the 7 heads and 10 horns. Now I want you to notice in verse number 7 that the angel tells John that he is going to explain the mystery of the woman. In other words, the whore. And he's going to explain the mystery of the beast, which we've already studied when we were in chapter 13. How many of you remember being here for the 3 weeks that we studied the mystery of the beast? All right, good. How many said, well, gosh, that was like 20 weeks ago? All right, well, anyways. So now it's time to find out who the whore of Babylon is and why she's sitting on the beast. And the best way to do that is to look at all of the things that the angel tells us about her. And then, believe it or not, it's going to be obvious as to who this whore is. So let's look at all the things that the angel tells us about the whore of Babylon. In verse number 18, we are told that the whore is a city, and that this city rules over not all, but rules over the kings of the earth. Look at verse number 18. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Now, there is only one city in the world that's said to reign over kings. In fact, they actually brag that they rule over the kings of the earth. And what city is that? The Vatican City. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. Let's keep going. Verse 9 tells us that the woman sits on 7 hills. Look at verse number 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. And the woman is what? A city. So verse 9 tells us that the woman sits, or in other words, the city sits on 7 hills. Now, for the last 2,000 years, only one city has been known as the city of 7 hills. That city is Rome, and more specifically, the Vatican City. Let me quote from the Catholic Encyclopedia, if you don't mind. It states, it is within the city of Rome, called the City of 7 Hills, that the entire area of the Vatican State proper is now confined. Verse 5 tells us that the whore's name is what? Mystery Babylon. Look at verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now I want you to understand something. The name of the whore is Mystery Babylon. A description of her is she is the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. But her name that's written on her forehead is Mystery Babylon. Now here's what's interesting. Babylon was the code name for Rome in first century Christianity. In other words, Babylon is the mystery name of Rome. Mystery actually means secret, and the only one that supposedly knows the secret are those that are initiated. So in John's day, the secret name for Rome among Christians was Babylon. Now let me prove that to you. I want you to turn to 1 Peter chapter 5, Verse number 13. If you don't have your Bible, make sure you write down this scripture. It says, your sister church here in Babylon sends you greetings, and so does my son Mark. Now, was Peter ever at ancient Babylon? No. Where was Peter when he wrote this letter or this book of the Bible? He was in the city of Rome. Now, it's interesting that he says your sister church in Babylon. But the reason he said that is because every Christian in the first century knew that Babylon was the mystery name or the secret name for Rome. So Babylon was the secret name for Rome during the apostolic period. And where's the Vatican located? At Rome. But let's keep going. Verse number 1 tells us that the whore sits on many waters. Look at verse number 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now in verse number 15, the angel explains what those many waters represent. Jump down to verse 15. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw, where the prostitute sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. Now you need to understand something that's very important. The position of sitting represents control. So what this is saying is that the whore is controlling the lives and the lifestyles of people in almost every country. Now, what city in the world has that type of control over so many people? In other words, what city is able to control the lives and the lifestyles of people all over the world? Well, there's only one. And again, they brag about it. It's the Vatican City. But let's keep going. Verse 4 tells us that the whore is incredibly wealthy. More wealthy than any other city. Notice what it says. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet clothing. She's decked with gold, pearls, and precious stones. In fact, let's read it directly from verse 4. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems and pearls. Now, people, there's a lot of wealthy cities in the world. New York City, London, Tokyo. But there's only one city that maintains their incredible wealth regardless of the economy. And that city is the Vatican City. The truth is, the Roman Catholic Church is by far the wealthiest institution on the earth. The value of their paintings by some of the greatest artists in the world and the sculptures by people like Michelangelo are priceless. You wouldn't believe the artifacts and all of the great works of art that they own. Their bank account is unbelievable. And here's what's interesting. The colors purple and scarlet are still the colors of their clergy. And they actually represent ranks within the Roman Catholic Church. Verse 6 tells us that the whore was drunk with the blood of the saints. Look at verse number 6. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Drunk with blood was a figure of speech in the ancient world. In fact, this is kind of interesting because you can find this in the exegetical commentary by Robert Thomas. And he goes back and he traces this idiom back to ancient times. And listen to this. This figure of speech referred to a lust for murder and the maddening effect it had on those who enjoyed killing. Have you ever watched those type of movies where maybe there's a serial killer or there's someone who's a psycho? And it seems like when he begins to kill or she begins to kill, it's almost as if they become intoxicated. It's almost like they become mad and all excited. And that's what this means when it says drunk with blood. Now, if you study the medieval Inquisition and the Spanish Inquisition, you'll find that this figure of speech accurately describes the Roman Catholic Church. According to the history of the Inquisition, over 3 million people were murdered during the Spanish Inquisition. And torture was a commonly used practice according to Bishop William Shaw Kerr, a church historian. I want you to listen to what he wrote, but I also want you to remember, this is a bishop. This is a bishop from the Roman Catholic Church. He is a church historian for the Roman Catholic Church, and when he went back, this is what he writes about the Inquisitions. The most ghastly abomination of all was the system of torture. The accounts of its cold-blooded operations makes one shudder at the capacity of human beings for cruelty. And it was decreed and regulated by the popes who claimed to represent Christ on earth. He's not biased, is he? Careful notes were taken, not only of all that was confessed by the victim, but of his shrieks, cries, lamentations, broken interjections, and appeals for mercy. The most moving things in the literature of the Inquisition are not the accounts of their sufferings left by the victims, but the sober memoranda kept by the officers of the tribunals. We are distressed and horrified just because there is no intention to shock us. In other words, they kept an account of how they tortured people and how they reacted and how they screamed and how long they were kept alive and all of those different things, but it was not meant to shock us. It was just meant to give an account. Now, most people don't know this, but the Spanish Inquisition didn't end until 1834. Did you know that? The medieval Inquisition started in 1233, and it didn't end until the Spanish Inquisition because it kind of transferred into that in 1834. So over 600 years, almost as many people were killed in the Inquisitions as in the Holocaust during World War II. So let's look at what we know about the Whore of Babylon. Well, before I say that, let me just say this. The only city that fits this description, that literally was drunk on the blood of the saints, would be Rome, and more specifically the Vatican. So, let's look at what we know about the Whore of Babylon. Let's look at everything that the angel told us about her, because he said he was going to explain to us the mystery of this woman who sits upon the beast. Number one, the whore is a city. Number two, she sits on 7 hills. Number 3, her name is Mystery Babylon, which is code for Rome. Number 4, she controls the life and the lifestyles of people from almost every nation. Number 5, she's incredibly wealthy. Number 6, she became drunk on the blood of the saints. So who is the Whore of Babylon? It's the Vatican City, the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I'm sorry, but when you look at all of the facts in Revelation chapter 17, it's very obvious. But I want you to understand something. I'm not saying that all Catholics are lost. That's not true. There are Catholics that are born again. There are Catholics that have died and gone to heaven, and there are Catholics that will die and go to heaven. But you need to understand that the majority of people in the Catholic Church do not have their faith in Jesus Christ. They have their faith in the church. They feel and have been taught that the reason they're going to heaven is because they're in the church. That guarantees them access to heaven. Now, you need to understand something. There are people in Protestant churches that are not born again. They are not going to heaven. And there are people in Protestant churches that are. What determines whether a person goes to heaven or not? Their faith. Their faith in Christ Jesus. Now, one of the reasons the Protestant churches came out of the Roman Catholic Church, in fact, the word Protestant means to protest. The reason we protested it, and we tried to actually change the Roman Catholic Church, in the beginning, they never had any desire to actually pull out of the Roman Catholic Church. Their desire was to reform the Catholic Church, and that's why it's called the Reformation period, because their desire was not to come out of the Roman Catholic Church, but to reform it. They understood and believed that there should be only one church upon the earth, and that's what Catholic means. It means worldwide, and they wanted to be a part of that worldwide church. But when the church refused, or the Roman Catholic Church refused to reform, it was only then that they had to pull out. And what was the number one reason for us pulling out? It was because of the doctrine that the Roman Catholic Church teaches, that a person merits the merit of Christ. We need to understand something. We can never merit the merit of Christ. Does that make sense? Jesus Christ is the one who's died for our sins, and as a result of Him dying for our sins, we don't work for it. It's not by works, but it's by grace that we're saved. But the Catholic Church doesn't see it that way. You must merit the merit of Jesus Christ. And that is the abomination that they taught, and that's why there was a split. But I do want you to understand this. I am not bashing Catholics. I'm just teaching what Revelation chapter 17 is describing. Now, why is she called a whore? Let's be honest. If your child said that, you would wash his mouth out with soap, wouldn't you? So you're reading along in the Bible, and it talks about the whore. Why is she called a whore? She's a whore because over the last 1,400 years, in fact, there's a mistake on your piece of paper. I didn't read over my notes real quick, or I read over them real quick, and I did not correct that. But it's over the last 1,400 years. She's a whore because over the last 1,400 years, she has prostituted her values and her beliefs to gain political power and wealth. And there is historical evidence of this all through the history of the Roman Catholic Church. And she's the mother of harlots because she's enticed others to prostitute their values and their beliefs in order to please her. Now I want you to notice that the whore is sitting on the beast. Turn back to verse number 3, Revelation chapter 17. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman is sitting on the beast. Now I want you to remember that the position of sitting has great importance. Why? Because the position of sitting represents control. So what this is saying is that the whore is controlling the beast. So according to verse number 3, the whore of Babylon will control the beast, but I want to make this little statement. In the beginning. In fact, the whore is the one that brings the beast into power. You see, during the first half of the tribulation, the beast is dependent upon the whore. Her influence, her worldwide influence, is what allows him to rise to power, and he's dependent upon her to stay in power, at least for the first half of the tribulation. But secretly, the beast and the 10 horns, the 10 kings, the 10 nations hate her. Why? Because they are Muslims. Remember me teaching that? And Muslims believe that Catholics are idolaters. They see all the icons, all the statues, even the crosses as idols. So even though the whore is going to be responsible for the rise of the Antichrist, for endorsing him, for giving him his power and giving him his influence, the Antichrist and the Muslim nations are going to secretly hate her. And when the Antichrist is firmly in control, he's going to turn on her along with all of the Muslim nations. Now, Pastor, where are you getting all this? Revelation chapter 17. Turn to verse 16. And the 10 horns that you saw. Horns represent, let me say that again. Horns represent kingdoms. Horns represent kingdoms. And the 10 kingdoms that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. Now, what does that mean? Well, underline the word desolate. Desolate is translated from the Greek word eremao. It means to strip of her treasures or to plunder her wealth. So when the beast turns on the whore of Babylon, the first thing that he's going to do is he's going to confiscate the wealth. He's not going to destroy the wealth. There's no reason to do that. He's going to confiscate her wealth. The second thing that he's going to do is he's going to strip her. The way it says it is that he's going to make her naked. To make her naked means he's going to expose her moral corruption to the public. Everything that she's done wrong is going to be exposed to the world. All of the backroom deals, all of the hypocrisy, everything. And he's going to use her corruption as an excuse to destroy her. The third thing that he's going to do is he's going to devour her flesh. That again is not a Hebrew idiom. It is an ancient idiom, and it means to murder. So he's going to murder all of the clergy. Now, what's kind of interesting is this devour the flesh is an idiom, and it expresses extreme vision or vengeance with hostility. In other words, they are going to do it with such hostility. And last but not least, it says he'll burn her with fire. In other words, he's going to burn the Vatican to the ground. It'll be completely destroyed. Now, when is all of this going to take place? Now, I told you when we began, I told you that it's going to take place sometime around the middle of the tribulation, right after the abomination of desolation. That's when the beast comes to his full power and the false prophet comes on the scene. At that point, he'll no longer need her. You see, during the first half of the tribulation, it's only because of her influence. She's actually sitting on the beast. She's in control of the situation. And because she has such vast influence over the world, especially when all of the Christians are raptured and they are out of here, and there's no Christians that's able to stop that, with her vast influence, she's going to be able to take this man and allow him to rise to power, and the beast needs her. But that all changes at the middle of the tribulation, because now he's firmly seated in power. And when the abomination of desolation takes place, he no longer needs her. Now, if you remember, when the beast comes on the scene, I told you that the Muslims are going to accept him as the Al-Mahdi. In fact, if you study Islamic eschatology, it is very uncanny how their eschatology, all of their prophecies fit with what the Bible teaches in the book of Revelation. It almost fits like a glove. And so you can see why the world is going to be deceived. So when the beast comes on the scene, all of the Muslims are going to accept him as the Al-Mahdi. Now, who will the Muslims think the false prophet is? Do you remember? Jesus. At least their version of Jesus. Now, if you don't mind, let me read from the Muslim Sunnah. Hopefully you remember what the Sunnah is. If you don't, go back and you can look in your notes. This is from the Muslim Sunnah. The prophet said, "There is not a prophet between me and him. That is Jesus. He will descend to the earth. He will break the cross, kill swine, abolish jizya. Allah will perish all religions except Islam." So when the false prophet comes on the scene, they're going to think that he's Jesus. And what will they expect him to do? They're going to expect him to break all crosses and to exterminate all religions with one exception, Islam. And when does the false prophet come on the scene? We found out in chapter 13, at the middle of the tribulation. That's how we know this is going to take place. The whore of Babylon is going to be destroyed at the middle of the tribulation. Now, can you see all of this coming together? Hopefully you can. Now, I told you not to confuse the whore of Babylon with the city of Babylon. So what is the city of Babylon? Rome. That was the code name. That's Mystery Babylon. That was the code name in first century Christianity for Rome. What is the whore of Babylon? The Vatican City. That's distinct from Rome. Does that make sense? So even though the whore of Babylon, the Vatican City, is going to be destroyed at the middle of the tribulation, Rome is not. Rome will not be destroyed until the end of the tribulation. Chapter 18 deals with the destruction of the city of Babylon.
Greetings in the name of Jesus, our blessed hope, and welcome to Christ in Prophecy. My associate, Nathan Jones, and I are delighted to have a friend and Bible prophecy colleague with us today as our special guest. He is Bill Salas. He is the founder and director of Prophecy Depot Ministries in La Quinta, California. Bill is a prolific writer and conference speaker. He is probably the best known for his insightful book about Psalm 83 and the war that is depicted in it. Welcome to Christ in Prophecy, brother.
David, thank you. Nathan, it's great to be with you. And I wanted to personally thank you for your May edition of the Lamplighter magazine, where I got my new nickname, the Star Trek Eschatologist. Boy, that was thanks for that.
Yeah, and I called you that because I said you go where nobody else will go.
Well, that's created some repercussions. Everywhere I go, people think I've become a pest exterminator now. They don't know what an eschatologist is. I've got to explain to them eschatos means last or final in the Greek, and ology is a study of. I study the last and final days.
Where in the world is La Quinta, California?
It is a couple hours east of Los Angeles. It's better known kind of by Palm Springs. It's a connecting city out there.
All right, Captain, are you ready to embark on another trip?
Let's go. Let's boldly go.
Let's boldly go. Let's boldly go to the subject of Mystery Babylon. I'm going to go to the source text, which is Revelation 17, verses 1 through 6. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which is full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Well, okay, Bill, I think when it comes to Mystery of Babylon, there's questions like who and what and where. Let's start with the where. Very popular, I'd say John Walvoord, for instance, in the Bible Knowledge Commentary, believes that the Babylon, or this Mystery Babylon, this harlot, is actually a rebuilt city of Babylon. What do you think?
Well, I agree. That is a very popular view. It's held by guys like Mark Hitchcock, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, Joe Rosenberg, and quite a few. I always qualify because at the beginning of the program, David mentioned several candidate cities for Mystery Babylon, and it is a great city, we're told in Revelation 17:18. But I remind people that according to 2 Peter 1:20, that no prophecy is subject to private interpretation. So we have to look at the details of the prophecy, and we've got to go through the interpretations given for these other candidate cities and narrow it down to the actual one, because 4 of them can't be, there's 5 candidate cities and 4 of them can't be the right ones. And I'm not advocating that I know the right one, but I think the body of evidence sways toward the direction of Rome. That'll be my argument as I present this today. But there are 3 primary reasons that I have concerns with rebuilt Babylon. Let's start with number 1. Let's capitalize rebuilt. Unlike the 4 other candidate cities you mentioned, Babylon is not a significant city right now. Saddam Hussein tried to build it a little bit, but the other cities are significant cities and they could become that city. But the bottom line is you'd have to rebuild Babylon, and it's in a war-torn area. You've got schisms between the Shiites and the Sunnis. It's not likely. Now, some of the advocates for this theory believe that Dubai, they remind us that Dubai was built rapidly as a city. Yeah. Number 2, my concern is, let's capitalize mystery, and mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. By definition, in the Old Testament, a mystery was something that was concealed. In the New Testament, it is revealed. And the angel reveals this mystery to us in Revelation 17:7 through verses 7 through 18 rather. He tells us in verse 9 that it's a city that sits on 7 hills, which at the time when John wrote, that was the notorious name of Rome. They even had coinage at the time with the goddess of Roma sitting on the 7 hills. It is also, he tells us in verse 15, that it is a global reach. It sits on tribes, tongues, peoples, and nations. And most importantly, I think in the last verse, 18, he tells us, he says that the woman you saw, referring to Mystery Babylon, in this vision given to John, he says it is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So let's break that down. The woman he saw, past tense, he saw this woman. She was sitting on the waters, the multiples, the tribes, tongues, and nations. And it is the city that reigns over the kings of the earth. It
was only be one city.
It was a city at the time John would clearly recognize was Rome. It doesn't say it will be the city that reigns over the kings of the earth. It says it is. And then lastly, I find this to be a very disturbing verse for these other advocates of that have looked at Mystery Babylon, and that is in Revelation 18:20. And what we find in that verse, it talks about, rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. I actually sometimes, and I don't normally do this, I quote the NIV on this verse because it says, God has judged her for the way she has treated you, referring to, he's talking about the holy apostles. Now, to me, that means that 2 or more apostles, plural, had to be judged and executed under the authorities of what this end times Babylon is going to be. And that would be, you had Peter, Paul, Andrew, and Jesus' brother James. These were apostles. Now, when you look at some of these other candidate cities, and in particular rebuilt Babylon, Iraq, which apostles were killed there? Was it John? Was it Matthew? No, none of them were even alive at that time.
Well, what do you do with Isaiah? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
I was going to say, one argument you did not mention is that in Isaiah it says that when Babylon is destroyed by the Medes, it will become as Sodom and Gomorrah.
Isaiah 13:20.
And people and will never be rebuilt again, it says. And the advocates often say, well, it wasn't destroyed in the same way as Sodom. It doesn't say that. It says it will become as Sodom and Gomorrah, and it has become as Sodom and Gomorrah.
It will never be inhabited, nor will be settled from generation to generation. So wouldn't that break that prophecy if it's a rebuilt Babylon?
Correct, yeah. So that's another text that
All right, let me ask you then. Some say that it's going to be Jerusalem. Now, how they get that, I don't know, but what do you think?
Well, it's not one of the more popular views.
That's right.
But it is one, and it deserves a commentary. But it says in Revelation 18:21 that when Mystery Babylon is destroyed, it will be thrown down and never be found anymore. It has an expiration date. Mystery Babylon has Jerusalem does not have an expiration date.
It goes on into the millennium.
Matter of fact, this is where in Jeremiah 3:7. Yeah, Jeremiah 3:17 is where Jesus is going to set his throne up in Jerusalem during the Messianic kingdom. So for me, I can't get past that contradiction there.
But what about another one?
Yeah. What about Istanbul or Constantinople?
Oh, you're talking about with the Mecca theory and things like that.
Well, you hear people say
No,
that.
I'd rather get into Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we did Jerusalem. Let's talk about Washington, D.C., America.
Oh, yeah, New York City.
Oh,
You hear
yeah,
New
well,
York City all the time.
Of course, America is not quite 250 years old.
And this
so
is becoming more and more popular. I just find this all the time. People think the United States is it.
that's the newer theory.
They'll even say Hollywood.
That's the newer theory.
All right, what about it? What about
That's
New York
the newer
City?
theory. I would say basically which apostles were killed in New York City, according to Revelation 18:20.
That's a good point.
What 7 hills are we talking about? And the advocates of this tend to say it's not really saying 7 hills, it's saying 7 continents. It sits in the midst of 7 continents. But the Greek word for hills or mountains in these translations is oros, and it cannot be translated as continents. It's either hills or mountains.
Yes, and also this is going to be the headquarters of the Antichrist. And the Bible doesn't indicate that the Antichrist is going to be in the United States of America.
Well, plus America hasn't killed all the prophets and the apostles, right? So how could...
I think that's a bit of a problem for that theory.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to then the one that I think is the newest, and that's the one that of Mecca. What about that? You just recently had a major debate on that, which is available on video at your website, right?
Yeah, it's called The Identity of Mystery Babylon, Mecca or Rome, and it was a debate I did with best-selling author, New York Times author Joel Richardson.
Yeah, well, tell our people how they can get in touch with you. What is your website?
That's prophecydepot.com, like Home Depot, prophecydepot.com, and we've got the products there, and that DVD is there. Now, it's a 3-hour discussion, a debate, that's not only a debate, but it's very informative and educational. I think the viewers will find a lot of educational information that they may not have known.
What is the title of that video?
The Identity of Mystery Babylon,
Okay.
Mecca or Rome. We specifically narrowed it down to those 2 cities. He's advocating that it's Mecca, and of course I'm taking the Rome.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes in this segment, so let's go. Tell us why it cannot be Mecca.
Well, one of the things that comes up in his presentation is, he's overlooking 2 powerful, what I believe are Muslim prophetic wars, Muslim-dominated wars in Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38, which I and many of our colleagues believe happened before the tribulation period. Remember, the harlot world religion comes up right around the time of the tribulation period. So if there are Muslim wars, epic Muslim wars beforehand, that would have an effect on really this location and the religion, the dominant religion at that time. So let's look at Psalm 83, for instance. You've got 10 populations. This is a final confrontation between the Arabs and the Jews, involving nations that surround surrounding nations that share common borders with Israel. They're defeated by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, all those nations are predominantly Muslim. There's 10 populations. You got Jordan and Lebanon with Hezbollah up there, and you've got Syria and Iraq, and probably Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and you got the Palestinians in there, and the Hamas, etc. Muslim countries. Right now, Joel Richardson's argument is, well, there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. It's obviously got to be the religion that dominates. Well, I would say after these 2 wars, in Ezekiel 38, I'll just mention in a minute, there's 600 million roughly Muslims involved in these wars that will be either killed, exiled, imprisoned.
By God himself?
Yeah, in Ezekiel 38, you have 9 entirely different populations. It's not the same prophecy. Apart from Russia, the other ones like Turkey and Iran, some of the countries above the northern continent of Africa, some of the breakaway republics of the Soviet Union, those are predominantly all Muslim right now. So you've got massive Muslim populations, and that is going to be defeated, an invasion of Israel defeated by the Lord with earthquake, flooding rains, hailstone, and brimstone. So I say Psalm 83 will be a punch to the gut of Islam. Ezekiel 38 will follow, be an uppercut to the jaw of Islam, so that by the time we get into the tribulation period, Allah will have lost his Akbar. Allah Akbar means he's the greater God. These terrorists always shout Allah Akbar all the time.
Imagine the disillusion of millions and millions of Muslims at constant defeat of Allah through these prophetic wars.
Yeah, and they're already converting away from Islam because they don't like the terrorism and this sort of thing. But I had a red flag also on the debate because Joel Richardson, who's actually a very good researcher, and in his Islamic Antichrist book, he also believes the Antichrist will be a Muslim. He noted a lot of historical sources that maybe thought that would be a Muslim Antichrist, but he didn't come up with any. I asked him, I said, just before 2008, when Walid Shoebat and Joel Richardson put their thoughts together that it would be Mecca, can you tell me anybody else, church fathers, reformers, or anything? And he couldn't, so that was a red flag to me. This means it's basically their new theory. And I reminded the viewers on the debate, I said, listen, we had church fathers who believed it was Rome. You had Lactantius, Tertullian, Irenaeus, Jerome. We had reformers who believed it was Rome, Martin Luther, John Knox, John Calvin, John Tyndale, John Wycliffe. We have contemporaries who believe it's Rome, and I believe you two are among that list. Jan Markell's on that list. You had J. Vernon McGee, Dwight Pentecost, Clarence Larkin, Grant Jeffrey, Tim LaHaye, Hal Lindsey, Warren Wiersbe, Mike Gendron's been on your program before, Dave Hunt. So I had a problem with that. I mean, it's okay. You can come up with a new theory. Daniel 12 tells us there'll be times where an information will increase and the visions will be unsealed. People will travel to and fro in Daniel 12 verse 4. But I think that's of concern.
Well, I would agree, and I also think it's absurd, and I mean absurd, to think that the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim. Any Muslim who would go to Jerusalem and declare himself to be God would be killed by the Muslims. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be killed by us, be killed by the Muslims.
Well, I think your book on that, David, was outstanding, dealing with the Antichrist.
It's just crazy. And is Israel going to make a covenant with a Muslim leader? I don't think so.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So, I don't know. I think you're right on target, and I hope people, will get a copy of your video, because it is very, very informative. You did a lot of research, and so did he. But I think that you made it very clear it's not going to be Mecca, and it's not going to be a Muslim Antichrist.
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay. Well, in just a moment, we'll be back, and we're going to ask Bill the crucial question. If it's not Jerusalem, if it's not Mecca, if it's not rebuilt Babylon, what in the world is it? What is Mystery Babylon? Do you find the entire book of Revelation to be a mystery, as many Christians do? If so, you need to get a copy of my book, Wrath and Glory. This book is 250 pages long and is written for the person in the pew. In that regard, my oldest daughter was the first person to read it, and when she gave me her response to it, she said, "Dad, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I understood every bit of it." And when I asked her why that would hurt my feelings, she said, "Well, I figured you wrote it for theologians." Well, folks, I got a good laugh out of that. I hastened to explain to her that she had just given me the greatest compliment she could, because the book was written for people just like her. The book is called Wrath and Glory because Jesus is returning in great wrath to punish the rebellious nations and peoples of the world. But then, after he has poured out the wrath of God, he is going to reign in glory and majesty from Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and the whole world is going to be flooded with peace, righteousness, and justice. This book will take you through the book of Revelation chapter by chapter, giving you down-to-earth, easy-to-understand explanations of the message. And it is a glorious message for believers. That's because the fundamental message of the book of Revelation is we win in the end. You can get a copy of the book for a donation of $20 or more, and that includes the cost of shipping. Just call us at the number you see on the screen or place your order through our website at lamblion.com. If you call, please do so Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Time. And as a special bonus, with each order, we will include a copy of this video, Revelation Revealed. It is a 75-minute video in which I take you through the entire book of Revelation. So, the Revelation book and the video can be yours for a donation of $20 or more, including the cost of shipping. Just ask for offer number 822.
Welcome back to Christ in Prophecy and our interview with Bill Salas about the identity of Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation. All right, Bill, you've discounted Jerusalem, you've discounted the rebuilt Babylon, you've discounted Mecca, you've even discounted New York City and Hollywood and Istanbul, Shanghai, you name it, you've discounted them all, and you said that Rome is Mystery Babylon. Why?
Well, I haven't discounted Shanghai yet, though.
Oh, okay.
But we will discount that because no holy apostles were martyred there.
Okay.
And that was, of course, by way of review. It's a city that sits on 7 hills. That's Rome. There were the holy apostles were killed there for vindication of Revelation 18:20 when it's judged. It is the popular view at this point. It listed the names of the church fathers and the reformers and the contemporaries like ourselves who subscribe to that. But additionally, the other reasons I believe it's the body of evidence sways in the direction of Rome is that at the time it was a code word. Babylon was a code word for Rome to avoid persecution. 1 Peter 5:13 mentions this in his epistle. He says, "She who is in Babylon, elect together with you, greets you," and so does Mark.
And he was in Rome at the time.
He was, and this was the common understanding. If you wanted to avoid the persecution blatantly, you had to
Use another word.
Hey, John was a prisoner on the Isle of Patmos. He was a prisoner of the Roman Empire. He couldn't write a document naming Rome, and he couldn't do that.
Yeah, most of our colleagues, no matter what city they subscribe to as being Mystery Babylon, would agree that is a code word for Babylon. We mentioned earlier, it was even the coinage had the goddess Roma sitting on 7 hills. It was commonly understood that it was Rome back at that time. Also, you had read in the beginning that this Mystery Babylon, this harlot, is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus, okay? We've got 2 different martyrdom scenarios there. The blood of the saints, I would say that could very well be the Inquisitions. When out of Rome you had, between the 12th and the 16th century, you had, literally they say millions.
Or during the Reformation, the slaughter of the Protestants.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And it says in Revelation 18:5, it's that God is going to judge that city. Is this city going to get a pass? I mean, he judged Sodom and Gomorrah, et cetera, and that sort of thing. It says, one translation is in Revelation 18:5, "For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and God has remembered her crimes." Okay. And when we look at Rome, as it started with what was first called pagan Rome with the Roman Empire, and then it morphed into papal Rome, where of course now you have the Vatican. There is no shortage of crimes and sins that have been perpetrated by a few with pagan Rome. It put to death God's Son, Jesus Christ. It martyred Christians for over 3 centuries. Some sources say over 210,000 during the time of the spread of Christianity. Killed 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, according to the Jewish historian Josephus, by 70 AD. Destroys the temple and Jerusalem in 70 AD. Destroyed it again in 135 AD with Bar Kokhba revolt. It killed hundreds of thousands of Jews between 132 and 135.
So you're seeing Rome as the Roman Empire, but then it just morphed into the Holy Roman Empire, and then it morphed into the Roman Catholic Church. You're seeing no distinction between the 3.
Absolutely. As okay. The Roman Empire started to disintegrate, they found it favorable to embrace Christianity to maintain its power for as long as it's good.
So Rome hasn't ended, it's still here today.
Well, it's gone into papal Rome at this point. We're dealing with the religious aspects of the harlot world religion. Okay. And again, I would say that is centered in Rome and has something to do with the Vatican. And the papal Rome, the crimes and sins there, expelled Jews from Spain in 1492 AD, expelled them from Portugal in 1497 AD, killed tens of thousands of Jews in the Crusades, hundreds of thousands of Protestants, if not millions, in the Reformation. It's responsible for at least 100,000 victims of sexual abuse in this country. What about worldwide? So. And these are just a few of the rap sheet of the crimes and sins, so that's a concern. But I think the main thing that gets me thinking along the lines, we're dealing with a world religion that's going to come on the scene at a time, I believe, after the rapture, when Satan is no longer going to be restrained from putting forward his closing arguments. The world's going to be in a run amok as we have the seal judgments being opened. You've got wars are going to happen. You've got famines and pestilences, and there's going to be this global government that establishes itself at a time when Satan is now free to unleash lying signs and wonders and deception. And when he's free to do that, he's known he's going to have the freedom to do that, according to Paul in 2 Thessalonians. He's not going to go, oy vey, what do I do now? What system do I embrace? What do I implement? I believe there's a system he's already put in place that has an end game, that's got supernatural deception fringes all around it with Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions and things like that.
Well, help me make the transition here, because we were saying it's a city, and now you're saying it's a religious system. Is it both encompassed in Mystery Babylon?
It is a religious system that is centered in a great city. It has a headquarters.
Well, now, I believe that God is going to judge Islam not only in the Psalm 83 war and the Gog and Magog war, because that's only the Middle East, and the vast majority of Muslims are outside the Middle East. The largest Muslim country in the world is outside. You know, you've got Indonesia and places like that. I think he's going to judge Islam through the wars of the Antichrist, because it indicates that the Antichrist is going to launch a war to conquer the world, and I think the people who will most obviously rebel against him will be the Muslims, and I think that God will judge the Muslims through that. That leaves what religion for the Antichrist? I think the Bible indicates there's two. He starts out with one, builds his empire, destroys it, and then creates another. Comment on that.
Well, the way I look at that is you've got a religious double jeopardy in the end times after the rapture. Well, you've got the harlot in Revelation 17. Okay, she is. It says that she's sitting on the beast, the Antichrist, in Revelation 17, verse 3. Revelation 17:7 says he carries her to her heights. So he's playing a little bit subservient role, second fiddle initially, as this system builds itself up. But at some point, it overextends its usefulness and becomes problematic. And we're told in Revelation 17:16 that he, with the unity of 10 kings, will destroy this harlot world religion, desolate it. But then all of a sudden now it says they give their kingdom and the power to the Antichrist at that point. And then, of course, he puts together his kingdom. And I take attention to Revelation 13, that's where you have the mark of the beast set up. Yes. It looks like he's been assassinated. He gets a mortal head wound. Some people say
false prophet heads up a new world religion.
Yeah. And then we find that there's another desolation in 1 hour in Revelation 18, that Babylon no longer exists anymore, be thrown down forever. So I deviate a little bit, and there's other people like Hal Lindsey and others who say Revelation 17 is that system. It gets desolated by the 10 kings. You go to religious system. You go to Revelation 13, and the Antichrist now has his time in the sun, where no one can buy or sell, and they take a mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead, and then God judges that.
Well, since this religion that he uses at the beginning to build, since it is centered in Rome, and since it has the blood of the martyrs on its hands, it seems to me this has to be Catholicism in some form, in which he uses this as a world religion, and it encompasses the religions of the world. Would you agree with that or not?
I absolutely do. You know, some people advocate that this is going to be some kind of ecumenical super church, but how do the 10 kings desolate Wicca and Judaism and Hinduism? And you know, the Catholic Church, who is all millennial, they're not waiting for the pre-trib rapture, the institution is going to be left behind, and I believe there's biblical prophecies about that. And they say they're the one true church, and they're going to argue that fact and say we are the one true church. Now they may reach out ecumenically to the nations of the religions of the world and embrace them, but they will not change their doctrine, that they are the one true church and that salvation comes through the Catholic Church, not just saved by grace through faith.
I got a sense of this, though, a few years ago. I think it was when Pope Paul was in position. I think he was the one who called for all of the religious leaders of the world to come to Assisi in Italy. And he said, let's come together and each one of you pray to your own God. And I thought, what? He even had an American Indian chief there who did a powwow dance. In fact, he stole the attention of everyone. But all these people, and the Dalai Lama was there, who is supposed to be God, and they're praying to whatever God. And I thought, boy, this is a view of what it's going to be like in the end times when you have this umbrella religion that calls everybody in.
That's right. It'll be the canopy over it all. But the reality is that it's going to be the dominant aspect. It would be.
It's going to become more dominant, and that's the reason the Antichrist is going to rebel.
Brings up a good point in one of his commentaries. He says, "Look, it would be easy to take out the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals and take out the institution, and confiscate all of its wealth and put your institution instead of that with the Antichrist scenario." So he's one who would advocate that as well.
Welcome back to Christ in Prophecy. Bill, one quick question before we end, and that is, if the Mystery Babylon religion is destroyed by the Antichrist, what religion does he set up?
Well, I believe that he will be probably putting together a new age type religion. That's what my favorite choice on that is. You know, we realize that it won't be Islam. That'll be taken out in those Muslim wars we talked about prior. It will no longer be Catholicism because that became problematic. It won't be Judaism because he's going to go along and try to commit genocide of the Jews. It's going to boil down in the end times to true Christianity and the false religion of the Antichrist, which I believe will be filled with supernatural deception and lies. It'll be a time when the paranormal is the new normal.
Satan worship.
It will be.
That's what it sounds like.
Satan's told Adam and Eve, you can become like God. This Antichrist may come along and say, here's, I'm going to show you how.
Yes,
So-
it's going to be humanism carried to its extreme, to its ultimate.
Yeah, absolutely. But whatever it is, it's going to be bad. And that's why we don't want people to go through it. We want them to know Jesus Christ right
Amen.
now.
Well, could you look in the camera, Bill? And again, tell us how we get in touch with you and get your wonderful resources.
Great. Well, thanks again for having me on the show. What a wonderful topic, Mystery Babylon. Well, listen, you can reach me at prophecydepot.com, articles, TV shows, etc., all there, prophecydepot.com.
Well, Bill, it's always a joy to have you with us, and you keep going out there where nobody will go and challenging us, okay?
Well, I'll do that,
Well,
David.
folks, that's our program for today. I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I hope, the Lord willing, that you'll be back with us again next week. Until then, this is Dave Reagan speaking for Lamb and Lion Ministry saying, look up, be watchful, for our redemption is drawing near.
Here Jesus, ek weet ek is 'n sondaar. Ek besef dat ek nie sal hemel toe gaan as ek nie 'n verhouding met U het nie. Ek glo dat U aarde toe gekom het en vir my gesterf het aan die kruis en weer opgestaan het uit die dood. Was my sonde weg deur U bloed en maak van my 'n nuwe mens. Ek wil nie meer sondig nie. Help my om vir U te lewe. Ek gee vandag my hart vir U en kroon U as koning van my lewe. Dankie dat ek nou deel is van die hemelse familie. Amen.